Criminal charges against the far-right militia group, the Three Percenters, are piling up as they join the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys as having multiple members swept up in the now sprawling criminal investigation into the Capitol insurrection. On Friday, 6 Southern California men, including 4 self-described members of the Three Percenters movement, were charged with felony counts of conspiracy and aiding and abetting the obstruction of a joint session of Congress. And that's just one of many cases making their way through the courts. All the while, some Republicans on Capitol Hill continue to downplay the significance of January 6th. Just yesterday, you know who, Ron Johnson, told Fox News that January 6th was not an armed insurrection and continued his claims that it was a peaceful protest. Watch.
They weren't rioting. It doesn't look like an armed insurrection when you have people that breach the Capitol, and I don't condone it, but they're staying within the rope lines in the rotunda. That's not what an armed insurrection would look like.
We're going to bring in NBC4 Washington's investigative reporter Scott MacFarlane, who is all over this story, and Frank Figliuzzi. But let me just, to Mr. Ron Anon Johnson, tell you who was there and what they were doing. Based on reporting in the Philadelphia Inquirer, accused Bucks Capitol rioter once assaulted an ex with pizza and tried to drown her, the feds say, in a bid to keep him locked up. He was so peaceful, he can't roam free. And another judge is ordering another January 6th defendant named Ryan Samsel transferred to state prison in Pennsylvania for his history of convictions for abusing and knocking women unconscious. Samsel is accused of toppling barricades and knocking over Capitol officers, a woman, of course, unconscious on January 6th. Scott, I have to start with you, but do you have any reporting on what the impression is among law enforcement of the effort to rewrite the brutality of that day?
They're flat out offended by it, Nicole. And let's be clear, there are already at least 2 defendants in the insurrection who are specifically charged with being armed that day, with having firearms on their person while here on Capitol Hill. So let's put aside the unarmed, or it didn't look like an armed insurrection. There are specific allegations 2 defendants were armed. Now, about the Ryan Samsel case you just mentioned, very appropriate case to mention because a judge has just ordered Samsel to be detained, held in prison in Pennsylvania, not just because of the January 6th case, but because of previous violations in Pennsylvania. Our reporting is that he was convicted of assaulting and knocking unconscious multiple women over the years, in addition to that Capitol Police officer. One of the things that caught our attention, though, Nicole, is the judge's order that he stay in prison says he's a threat to democracy if released. Yet another judge, Nicole, throwing shade at Donald Trump and the continued denialism about the November elections.
That is amazing, Frank Figliuzzi. And when you look at the Reuters reporting from last week about the death threats against election workers, when you look at the phony audits in Arizona that have now become like a pilgrimage site for other people who want to attack the election result, what do you make of the fact that judges are now making rulings like what Scott's reporting, that they're a threat to democracy?
Well, understand that judges see more than just what is made public in a courtroom hearing. They see the evidence that the prosecutors have, and they are able to make these kind of 30,000-foot pronunciations or pronouncements that, look, this is more than just a violent guy. This guy represents one of many who are a threat to democracy. And I think you're right not to take these just in piecemeal form, but to look at the totality of the circumstances of the adherence, the particularly fringe element of adherence to Donald Trump and what they represent. They represent lying about an outcome of a validly court-approved, validly audited election outcome. They represent violence on January 6th. They represent a notion. One of the things that's come out just recently in an intelligence community report, Nicole, that's unclassified, at least in the version that's unclassified, is at least 20 of those arrested so far regarding January 6th. At least 20 of them are known QAnon adherents based on the language they're using on social media or their own concessions during interview. So let's remember what QAnon believes in. The world is controlled by a cabal of Satan-worshiping, cannibalistic pedophiles, right? And it says that in the intel report in the first paragraph. This is the kind of people we're talking about. So, yeah, in the totality of circumstances, yes, they represent a threat to democracy. They represent a threat to truth and the rule of law as well.
But, Scott, I think what we're all saying is they also represent a threat to specific individuals whose names can be written on court documents to argue for keeping them in jail. And that seems to be happening more and more frequently. Is that accurate?
Yeah, my latest reporting, Nicole, is there are 39 U.S. Capitol riot defendants in the D.C. jail, the one closest here to Capitol Hill, and nearly all of them are challenging their pretrial detention, but they're losing that fight. The judges are either citing the ongoing threat of denying of the election or the threat these defendants have posed in the past with their criminal histories.
It's just an amazing, amazing state of affairs. We're lucky that you're staying on top of all of it, Scott McFarland. Thank you for spending some time with us, and thank you, Frank, for making sense of it for us.